Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests of the 46th Poetry International Festival, welcome. My name is Nathalie van Meurs. I'm a programming intern at Poetry International. Tonight you'll be listening to a craft talk by Basque poet Harkaitz Cano. Maybe it's the typical whimsical Basque weather. Maybe it's the palpable difference between the quiet and, as Harkaitz says, almost boring winters and the lively but overcrowded summers that causes him to look for all that falls between these extremes. The difference that causes the need to explore the fluidity between art disciplines. For our festival anthology, we have selected one poem from each festival poet. Harkaitz's poem is called People I Telephone, which can immediately be translated to the topic of tonight's craft talk, the exchange of words. To be more specific, the fluidity between words and given or perceived meaning, the fluidity between words and reality, words and empowerment, words and music, words and art, and words and catharsis. But what happens if words have reached their limits? Which tools can we use to enhance the messages we are sending into the world? In a recent interview with Poetry International, Cano states that a Basque writer sometimes feels that he's the first one walking on fresh snow. It may be harder to step on, but the fact that you're creating with your own footprints, your path and tradition can be extremely exciting too. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Harkaitz Cano.
Thank you very much. So I do have like two speeches. Which one do you prefer? A, B? B? A? Okay, I'll switch from one to the other. Maybe I won't talk that much about poetry, maybe, but more about literature itself, because I don't like very much that distinction between poetry as a supreme form of art and literature, or the poet and the writer. You know that? I don't feel very comfortable as a poet. I prefer to say that I write poems. Sometimes. Sometimes I do a script writing, a scenario. Sometimes I write soap opera. And soap opera is also close, very close to poetry. It seems so far away, but it's not. A very, very good soap opera and a very, very bad poem, they are almost the same. So we'll figure out something. Maybe we can start from the start. So I would like to read two very, very well-known beginnings of two novels. And the first one is, many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Aureliano Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. Of course, it's 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel García Márquez. So here it goes. There is this man facing the firing squad, and he's remembering that day in which his father took him to discover ice. Meaning what? Ice in Macondo, in a place where ice wasn't common at all. So in the very last moment of his life, he's trying to remember something that brings him a ray of light, right? And that's the very definition of poetry. which is the story that I going to tell myself before dying, when I know for sure that I'm going to die. How justify somehow that my life wasn't absolutely useless after all. Remembering eyes, in that case, the ray of light. Or, as Joan Margarit, the poet from Catalonia, said, this poem, that it is a black box or a black room in which you transform. You get into this black box with one point of view, some feelings, some prejudices, and after you get out of this black box, of this room, something is changed, something that has nothing to do sometimes with understanding, but something is changed. So that black room, that black box, should be poetry. There is another beginning here that you all know. In a village of La Mancha, the name of which I have not decided to call to mind. So you know that Jorge Luis Borges used to say that Don Quixote was the very first crime fiction novel of history. Because, come on, you have not decided to call to mind the name of this place? Why? You are hiding some important piece of information. So don't trust the main voice that tells you the story. That's another lesson. Moby Dick. Call me Ishmael. If I ask you to call me Ishmael, is it Ishmael my real name? Don't trust this voice. I find that short stories and poems are so similar in many ways. If you tell a novelist to pack a suitcase, he will organize an entire move. He will bring with him the whole furniture, the house. But the short story writer or the poet puts only the bare essentials in the suitcase. So for me, in a way, a poet is someone who knows how to travel with a small suitcase. He's able to do that. There are some similarities between short stories and poems, at the point that sometimes I can't really know if I am writing a poem or I am writing a short story. I get confused all the time. Sometimes I write a poem, and after that I think, okay, damn it, it should be a short story, not a poem, and vice versa. So there is one thing important, that you read again and again the short stories and the poems that you like most. You can't do that with a novel. You seldom read twice a novel unless it is some masterpiece or whatever. But a short story you like, a poem you like, you come back again and again to read again this poem. And that's why that's something that is out of the market, because the market pressure is always selling numbers, but there is no way to know how many times you read a poem. We should search it out too. When talking about best-selling books, we should talk about rereading books too. Which book is the book of the poem or the short story you read more times again and again. So, I don't know if I was supposed to give some tips for writers to be, to me, the very sense of writing is trying to know what's happening to you when you don't know what's happening to you. So it's the way to figure out what's happening to me as I am getting older, or what's happening to my country, or what's happening to my environment, my family, all that. I don't know. So the way to know is to write it down. And you can figure out after if what's really happening to you, okay? There is this moment in which you choose to start writing a story that is in your mind for many months, sometimes maybe years. And sometimes you overcook this story in your mind and it's too late to write it down. So you better don't write it. The other times you feel a little bit lost when you don't have these guidelines, these clear guidelines to start writing a story. So there is a point between these two moments in which you have to start working. Not too late, but not too early. And that's maybe the most tricky thing of writing, the moment you choose to start. I would like to quote also David Foster Wallace, who said that a good artist in the 21st century is a kleptomaniac with good taste. So it's open to discussion what good taste means, of course. Maybe we can discuss it later. But I like this definition very, very much. Being kleptomaniac and being a thief is not the same thing, as you know. You should steal only the things that you feel so close to appropriate that you can't not do that. You can't help it. You have to steal it. So if you feel like this way, like a kleptomaniac, then steal it. Feel free to steal. As Picasso said, good artists steal and bad artists copy. So it's better being a kleptomaniac than a copyist, right? For example, you know this, you remember the Picasso's sculpture made by a handlebar of a bike and the seat of a bike, right? You remember? It's a collage. You can see the handlebar, you can see the seat of the bike, but foremost, you see a whole new sculpture that it is a bull's head. I would like to do that with poetry too. How? I don't know yet. But I like this idea of the collage you can use and recycle also, a word that Kenneth Goldsmith said a couple of years ago, or days ago. And this new, utterly new sculpture that comes out of two different things that have nothing to do with the bull's head, but after all, it is a bull's head. We discussed and spoke about truth, also truth and poesy. Poetry seems to be something that helps to search the truth. Okay, I'm not that sure. I don't believe in the truth with capital letters. But yes, I do believe, of course, in true gestures, small gestures, and the real duty of the poet being trying to grasp and seize that gestures and that moments in which we feel that there is something that deserves to be preserved, right? If you remember this scene of the film Roman Holiday, you remember this film? With Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn. They go to visit a monument called Bocca della Verità, the mouth of truth. And there is this legend that says, that's a story that says that if a liar puts his or her hand in this marble mouth, this mouth will bite that hand. And Gregory Peck kids about this story with Audrey Hepburn. But the most interesting thing about Boca de la Verità, though, is that experts aren't sure whether it was a fountain or a sewer, a cloaca. So it was a fountain or it was a drain for dirty water. Boca de la Verità, mouth of truth. I find that it is a very interesting metaphor, because if you are looking for the truth, be ready to find either a fountain or a sewer. Heraclitus said that in searching for the truth, be ready for the unexpected, for the truth is hard to find and puzzling when you find it. I don't know you, but to me, if Heraclitus says that, there is no discussion over. Poetry and literature is also dealing with memory and amnesia. Poetry is, of course, about life. It's as simple as that. Between the cradle and the grave, walk the walk and live the life. I approach poetry mainly, I said before, from a short storyteller. It's about telling stories. That's my perspective. And dealing with memory and amnesia, I said. Sometimes you remember, sometimes you forget. And which one is the proportion, the right proportion? That's our work. There's a tip for young, new writers. Ernest Hemingway said, "Kill your darlings." Meaning what? If you are particularly proud of a sentence, or you are in love with an aphorism or something you wrote, well, try to remove it from your story, try to remove it from your poem, and let's see what happens. If the story of the poem or the poem, they still work properly without this sentence, maybe it wasn't necessary. So, sometimes you have to kill your darlings, so to speak. Second tip, adjectives. That's something that I learned with my first publisher and editor, who said to me that adjectives are like wrinkles. Be careful with adjectives because they get older much more faster than verbs and nouns. So your poem will also be out of date sooner if you use more adjectives. Verbs and nouns, they don't get old as far as adjectives do. So keep that in mind. Irony, humor. That's a very important point for me. Humor and irony as a redemption, a way to redemption. You know, Francis Picabia, French artist and writer, he once said, irony is the politeness of desperate people. So we are desperate, but we are polite as well. So irony is our way to make it through the night. For instance. Thank you. There's another point about truth and about faking. And as Natalie said before, in the Basque Country, we had to make up our own tradition. We had a tradition, a strong oral tradition, but not a literary tradition in many ways. So the funny thing about writing in Basque is that sometimes you feel that you are your own grandfather, because you have to make up what your literary grandfather would write, but he didn't. You become your own grandfather, and that's very funny. It's a very good language, and it's a very good culture to forgery and faking things, and I love faking. You know that Oscar Wilde once said, "Give me a mask and I'll tell you the truth." The same idea that expressed one day Fernando Pessoa, who said, "O poeta è un fingidor." The poet is someone who pretends to be better than he is, pretends to be more devilish maybe, pretends to be more intelligent, more handsome. There is the great thing about being a poet or a writer. You only write, or you only try to write the books or the poems that you don't know how to write. And you figure it out while you are writing these stories, okay? That's something that Italo Calvino said. Try to write those books that you don't know how to write and that you know that you cannot really write. So that's the real challenge. Otherwise, you stay home, but not writing. When you write, when you try to deal with these ideas, memories, and forgetfulness, you should write against you, but you should write against the reader too sometimes. Or at least don't give to him all he wants all the time. Or don't give to him all he wants in the way he's expecting to have it, right? That was my first speech, okay? Half of the first speech. So I will tell something about these pictures, maybe also. This one is Jean-Michel Basquiat. My feeling is that many times, and I feel frustrated about that, words are not enough. I guess everybody knows that. You feel that, okay, this may be a good story, this may be a good poem, but words are not enough. So what happens when words are not enough? I do have some artists that I love, and they always help me to write. And some of them are here, so maybe we can tell something about a few of them. There is a Chilean poet, Raúl Zurita. Do you know him? Raúl Zurita. He once said, "If there have to be horrors for poetry to exist, let there be no poetry." Raúl Zurita was a poet. He still is a poet, but he realized that words weren't enough and wanted to give his words another context, another texture, and started writing verses on the sea cliffs, which only be read far from the coast. So even though a poem is a public space, I believe that a poem is not about the feelings of the poet. It's a public space in which the reader goes to feel something. What felt the poet while he was writing this poem, I don't care about it. But even though it is a public space, Raúl Zurita, he asked the reader to go away to see the poem, to read the poem. So sometimes you have to make it difficult for the reader. Um, even more, Zurita used his own body, and that's very interesting to me. He used his own body to denounce people turning a blind eye to the dictatorship in Chile. He sewed up his eyelids so that he couldn't open his eyes to denounce this dictatorship. Chance, also. Words, body, and chance. What about chance? Chance too plays a very important part in Zurita's work and puts words into perspective. In one of his performances, for instance, he wrote words all over the blackboard-covered walls of a room in chalk, and then let some doves, some birds free in this room, black room. Over time, the blackboard-covered walls of a room, they were blurring because of the birds, of the doves that they were flying over there. So doves wiped out the words written in chalk, rewriting his poem in a completely random way, or really rubbing them out little by little. So here is chance at work. There is another undeniable alliance between words and everyday things and art that I love, and it is Felix González Torres, an artist based in New York. He died of AIDS. His boyfriend had also died of it a year earlier. And when that happened, González Torres rented several billboards in New York City and put pictures of his empty bed on them. A sign of emptiness, the emptiness of his lover had left behind, and at the same time, a tribute to him. Secondly, he included a glamorous curtain of little golden balls in an exhibition hall and invited the visitors to walk through it. Without knowing exactly what, something changes as you walk through that curtain. And then you are even more moved when you read the explanation. When he was lying on his deathbed in the hospital, there was no more than a dirty curtain separating the last hours of the boyfriend of Felix González Torres from the patient in the next bed. Dirty curtain. Bad memories. So, to turn it around, he decided to make the most glamorous curtain in the world as a catharsis. And here comes the word that I was to underline today. I wanted to underline today. If only all poems were like that curtain, taking us to the other side. Again, curtain, black box, the other side. There are many other artists, but we don't have time today to speak about all of them. So maybe something about the endings, ending a story, how to end a story. That's something that they ask all the time in workshops. How should I end my story? You know that Heraclitus, again, he said, a good ending, a good closure, is a closure in which the audience or the reader in a film or in a book feels that this ending is unexpected, but as well is the only possible ending. It seems it's something contradictory, right? Unexpected, and at the same time, the only possible ending to this story. But we do it all the time, at the movies maybe, when we see the ending of a film, and we do this movement like, how? Of course. So this double gesture is exactly what Heraclitus said. Good ending is unexpected, but at the same time, you feel that it is the only possible ending to this story, to this poem. I think that there is something related to Darwin in the endings. You know, the main character of a story, either he adapts to the new situation to go on living, or he doesn't adapt to the new situation and dies, or he doesn't adapt to the new situation and gets away. So if you keep attention, most of the stories, films, novels, they end with one of these categorizing situations. And that's all. That's all in 25 minutes. I mean, we can go on later on if you want. I want to say you thank you, of course, and I will read a poem, but it is, I think it is a good example of what I said this evening. And this one is a poem about Jean-Michel Basquiat. I said that the poet is someone who pretends to be. Well, now I pretend to be Jean-Michel Basquiat, the painter. Ni naiz Jean-Michel Basquiat, artista beltza, gorriak pasatakoa. Beltzek eta zuriek baztertua, gustu orokorraren begietan eta kantari blonden ipurtzuloetan atza sartzen zuena. Bere etxeko ateetan eta errezeletan margotzen zuena. Hiltzenean bere oskailu margotua lagunek merkezurrean saltzeko lapurtu ziotena. Hiltzenean 3. abenidako taller mekaniko bateko 200 kiloko atea lapurtu ziotena. Bertan bere grafiti bat zegoelako. Ni naiz Jean-Michel Basquiat. Lientzuen gainean kafea hartu, bazkaldu, sumindu, poztu. Desesperatu eta uzten ziotenean lo egiten zuena. Lientzoetan beren eskalagunen telefonoak apuntatu eta haiekin haserretzean ezabatu egiten zituena. Gauzak ongi nabarmentzeko eta jendeak haiei kasu egiteko marraztutakoak oro ezabatzea baita biderik onena eta bakarra. Ni naiz Basquiat. Andy Warholekin boxeoan aritu eta irabazi egin ziona. Ni naiz. New Yorkeko downtowneko neska zuri progre usteko guztiekin larrua jozuena. 2 astetan eta 10 segundotan margotutako kuadroak prezio berean saltzen zituena. 10 segundu horietako eskumuturaren dardaran bizitza osoa zegoelako. Ni naiz Basquiat. Haur problematikoa, topera bizi nahi zuen rasta hileko gazte, xalo, merkatuak irentxia, maitagarria, jasangaitzea, jasona, sakona, axalekoa, naturala, artifiziala. Zuk nahi duzuna. Jada hilik nagoen ezkero. Ni naiz hori. Dirurik etzeukanean edo bere ganbeluak huts egiten zionean, Washington Squareen lo egiten zuena, 2 telebista eta 2 gramola topera jarrita pintatzen zuena, lapurra, bilaua, aingerua, errege koroatua, frakasoaren ama eta mama, arrakastaren semea eta bilo rasta biz biloba, begien ondoan, aur bozatu baten tristura bistakoa zuena. Eta nola ez, 27 urterekin gaindosia ziltzena. Lurpetik beso atera nahi duena, hilarriari bere gustoko azken zertzela da margotu, azken telefono zenbakia apuntatu, eta ezabatzeko ez gauza. Brooklyngo hilerri honetan, eta bere kuadro bakoitzean datzana. Ni naiz Basquiat. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Harkaitz, for your inspiring words. This brings the craft talk to an ending. I hope you've enjoyed it. We have some wonderful other programs. There's a translator slam by Henkes and Bindervoet. We have a very, very nice closing program with flashbacks of the festival, with music and everything. And I hope you have a very good night.